So, Mr. Kanoria, EU-India summit takes place later today. How do you think the FTA negotiations will finally fall in place?
Actually, I think that it would have been good if this FTA could have been signed at this summit. I always believe that deadlines are the best negotiators
Hmm.
because deadlines then make sure that one concludes whatever one desires.
Hmm.
And the fact that it is not happening now, uh, I don't know what it means for a new deadline. I would like to see it happen as fast as possible. And from whatever reactions I get, I've had the occasion of meeting people outside the system also. I was in London and I met Mr. Stephen Gain. I believe that there is a possibility that during this year the India-EU FTA should be signed.
But for that to happen, one side has to give. Who
Both
will
sides have
give
to
in
give.
first?
See, any negotiation is a give and take. And I think ultimately what one is trying to achieve is to ensure that both countries benefit.
Hmm.
I mean, when we are negotiating, it feels like a lot of pain. So there's pain on both sides. But at the end of it, I think there will be gain on both sides.
But do you see any flexibility on the European side on our issues, India's key issues?
See,
And if you can enumerate what are our key issues?
one of the key issues that we have is obviously in the services sector, and that's the movement of national persons. And that's mode 4 of the negotiations. Mode 4 I'm using mode 4 in WTO terminology. It's not in the context of the India-EU FTA. But I think services, negotiations in a difficult economic environment are always more difficult.
Yeah.
And if you look at the success of world trade negotiations, even multilateral negotiations, I mean, the most successful period was in the mid-90s when the entire world was witnessing an economic boom. And the worst experiences have been in times of economic crisis. In 2001, when there was a crisis, then it was thought that trade would actually lift the sentiment and mood. In 2001, very clearly the Doha Development Round was born, when all the wisdom in the political circle in the world thought that the right thing would be to boost, give a boost to trade and development, and as a result of that, take the world out of economic problems.
Yes.
We don't see that sense of urgency anymore, and it seems that trade has gone into the back burner.
Yeah.
And I feel that one is the economic problem. Secondly, out of the 5 members of the UN Security Council, 4 of the members are going to undergo changes in government during this year. So as long as there is a political agenda, there is bound to be more attention to issues which are more domestic in nature. And the US, France, Russia, and one more is 4 of them have already. So I think I think the atmosphere right now is difficult. As far as give and take from India and EU point of view, one of course I mentioned is mode 4. From the EU side, the major issue is the automotive industry, where there is talk of reduction in tariff from 60% to 30%. And for small automotives, India has only, as far as I understand, has agreed to reduce from 50 to 40. And I think we'll probably see some kind of hybrid solution coming out, in the sense that there will be a reduction in tariffs. There will be a phase out over a period of time to a further lower level, but probably we'll see something like the form of TRQs, which is tariff rate quotas, where the number of automobiles
Will be controlled.
allowed for at lesser duty will be limited, and that could be country-wise, it could be for the EU as a whole. I don't know how that will. As far as wines and spirits is concerned, I think there seems to be some kind of understanding, and that will happen. I don't know, are there really any serious pain points other than services? Now, beyond that, there is obviously this concern that even though trade issues might get resolved, there are a large number of non-trade issues, and very rightly so, India is concerned that some of these non-trade issues are becoming more important than the trade issues, whether it be environmental standards or labor standards. And some products of Indian origin have faced a lot of problem because of technical barriers to trade. So I think on the table, the non-trade issues probably become more critical than the trade issues, and I think they need to be addressed. I feel that even in general, even for the multilateral system, non-trade issues will start dominating, because tariffs were kind of bundling all the issues into a quantitative number. And the fact that tariffs are no longer there means that all the issues become negotiable on an independent basis.
Sorry.
So I think that that needs to be kept in mind.
Will India bring up this issue of aviation tax that EU has imposed?
No, frankly, I'm not in a position to answer that, because I don't know whether India will bring about.
You expressed your optimism or your hope that will be settled this year, but there is crisis which is not getting better, definitely, if not getting worse. France is due for elections. It's one of the two motors of Europe. So, isn't that being a bit optimistic for this year?
No, I mean, I still think that the threats in this entire FTA are very limited. So even if we have an economic crisis, and even if we have political compulsions on elections, I think the threats for an India-EU FTA are very, very limited from a strategic point of view, because I think it's good for, if I'm allowed to use the terminology, both nations, though the EU is really not a nation in the sense, but it is an economic bloc which is acting in unison. So I personally think that it is a doable and definitely achievable objective.
Then why was it not done so far? I mean, because the same issues have remained on the table. We want free movement. They want
See, this issue of free movement, I think, is very contentious right now, because this whole issue of domestic jobs being exported, that needs to be addressed. And as I said, I mean, if you are going in for an election, if you are
it's
going
not something you can sell.
It's not an idea which you can sell. So when I say that during this year, by that time all this will be over, and all the elections will be finished, and the last one of them happens to be in the US. So this entire psychology is likely to undergo a change. At least I would hope so.
But by the time we would be ready for our elections here. Beginning of next year,
So
we'll start
for
seeing.
our elections, I don't think any of the issues which are dealing with the India-EU FTA are politically sensitive.
Okay.
And if you look at this issue of automotives, it is really an industrially sensitive topic. It's not a politically sensitive topic.
Okay.
It's good for the consumer.
Mm.
So what is good for the consumer is actually politically a better thing to do.
Okay. Indian economy, where are we? We are seeing fairly mixed signals coming.
See, I think this external focus requires a deeper internal focus. And if we are to engage ourselves with the rest of the world, we need to be prepared to be able to engage ourselves. And I think there is a need to take some bold decisions to set the economy back on track. Unfortunately, as a country, our reactive power has been reduced considerably because we are faced with fiscal problem, current account deficit, with high rates of interest, inflation, and I think really not much control on our social spending.
Yeah.
All these problems have to be addressed. If we talk about inflation, it leaves us little room in our monetary policy to actually reduce interest. But some countries, let's take Brazil for example, has actually reduced their interest 4 times in the last 3 months uh, at the cost of inflation
Inflation.
and fiscal deficit because they have chosen the path of growth. I think India also needs to look at that aspect as to whether we will continue to talk about inflation and restrict growth or whether we can take some bold initiatives to actually bring growth back on track. So it's a choice which has to be made. And I personally, from the business community point of view, would like to see the choice in favor of growth.
Do you expect some bold moves in the budget?
I wish the government revisited this entire social expenditure, and I wouldn't like to see moves of fiscal consolidation uh, resulting in an increase in either indirect or direct
Okay.
tax. And I would like to see the expenditure side of the budget, or the balance sheet, or profit loss account, whatever you might like to call it, addressed. And I do believe that there is a need for social programs. I don't for 1 minute think that there is no need for it. But there is also a need to ensure that the delivery mechanisms are proper
Okay.
and that the right recipients and the target for whom these social programs are meant are the only recipients of that. And there have been some issues which we have mentioned, one of them being subsidies on hydrocarbons. I'm using the word hydrocarbons because if I say diesel, then there is a reaction to it. But I believe that hydrocarbons in general are being subsidized in the country.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is there a need for hydrocarbon subsidy for people who can afford to pay for it? One is obviously the social aspect of it, the other is the environmental aspect of it. By subsidizing hydrocarbons, we are also negating this entire issue of climate change. So, I think this is certainly one area which needs to be looked at. I also feel that the issue of food security needs to be tackled by taking bold steps on the agricultural sector. Sometimes it is not understood that agricultural sector is also directly related to the patterns of land holding and the manner in which transactions in land are taking place. And I feel that agriculture should be given a huge boost. And from FICCI, one of the priorities that we have during this year is to actually develop a comprehensive plan for the agriculture sector so that we can kind of at least look at something which happened during the early 70s in the form of the Green Revolution. Because I feel that there is a dire need for another Green Revolution today.
Okay. Political limbo, are we getting out of it?
See, political limbo, I would just wish that these elections will throw up clear power equation so that decisions can be taken one way or the other and not taken at all. So these 5 states will have a great deal to say in what happens after March or April. I don't know whether the budget itself will get affected by it or not, but certainly policy framework in the government will get affected by it.
Okay. Which way will it go? For the better?
Yeah, you saw what the language and terminology which I used was neither way. I just said that it will, let's say if you do very badly, then there is a different outcome. If the Congress does very well, there's a different outcome.
Okay.
And I would not like to hazard any guess on which way it
So you're
will
not
go.
putting your money on this side right now?
No, I might put my money but not in public.
Okay. Finally,
That's not to be quoted, huh?
no. We'll edit that. Rio plus 20 is taking place later this year. Where is India in this? Are we taking a back seat on those issues?
See, again we get into the debate of growth. So we should be conscious about climate change. I've already talked about hydrocarbon. Therefore, we need to put together a policy which does not encourage emissions.
Yes.
But at the same time, I don't think we can sacrifice our growth to the extent that we stifle it by.
No, my question was that at the international discussion forum, are we putting our points clearly and well? Or are we
I
sitting
think
more
as
behind?
far as India's engagement in the international fora is concerned, whatever feedback we get from whoever we meet is that our negotiators are well prepared
Okay.
and good. And they are, we may have a point of view which is different, but then that's always allowed to have a point of view which is different.
Absolutely.
It does not mean that we are not engaging ourselves.
Okay.
We may not engage ourselves in the manner in which the rest of the countries want us to, but our points, I think the people who are representing us are doing a good job.
Okay. Would FICCI have a special agenda for Rio plus 20? Are you preparing something for that?
Sure.
We'll have to check.
We'll have to check.
We'll have to check with our environment group team.
So Rita Rauchaudhary, she
Okay.
is handling our environment, and there is a separate committee also on environment.
Okay.
She'll be able to give you inputs.
Okay.
I'll put you in touch.
You see, I'll be very frank with you. No matter what agenda we prepare from the international point of view, I think we need to have a domestic agenda for this.
Yeah.
The agenda is essentially domestic. The international is merely a manifestation of the domestic
Absolutely.
agenda. And from the domestic front, I can tell you on a few issues which FICCI is working, is we are certainly working on a whole lot of renewable energy systems. So, for example, we talk about the development of the solar industry in India. The government has used the method of reverse bidding and subsidies, which I don't think is the right way to go about it. I mean, there is also a scheme which exists within the framework of the government of the renewable purchase obligations, which is akin to carbon trading.
Yeah.
So, schemes which are more participative in nature and do not burden the exchequer are much better schemes as long as they are properly enforced. So I think we need to revisit this entire concept. Reverse bidding is going to lead to inefficient plants. It's going to, I mean, you go and commit yourself to tariffs which are ridiculously low,
Yeah.
and then it continues to burden the government because they have to keep doling out money. So we need, so that's one area we are certainly working on. And other, hydrocarbons I've already talked about. And we have these kind of paradoxical, oxymoronic type situations in our framework of subsidies. So we will give subsidies on kerosene and diesel, and we will also subsidize the renewable energy sector.
True.
So we need to carefully study these from a strategic point of view and come up with a conscious policy on handling climate change, which covers issues of also cost to the government, and ultimate cost to the taxpayer.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to maybe come back and talk to you later, some other time, on my next visit to India on Rio Plus 20, because we like to perhaps working with
Okay,
UNEP.
we'll prepare on that. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not really fully prepared. I have only been able to react to something which I know, but that's not a comprehensive answer.
Anything else you would like to add?
I request Rika to brief you.
No, I would like to say that India EU, we want to see the FTA. We would like to see the India EU FTA
Getting through.
going through. Business is interested because it is for the benefit of business in terms of technology transfers and engaging with a set of countries from which there is a lot to.
But if we want free movement of people, and EU keeps on saying that, listen, we are 27 different countries with different rules, check with immigration of each country. I mean, that's very easy for them to hide behind that.
But there is also these issues of security concerns will remain. And the fact that within the EU you can move from one country to another does cause some amount of concern because they don't know where one is intending to settle down. But at the same time, if you look at the world, let's take the world in 2030. I believe 2 billion people will be added, out of which only 150 million will be added in the developed world. So the demographic profile of this world is going to look very different. There will be many more Indians and Africans and
Chinese.
True.
not so many Chinese. China doesn't have an increasing population. Surprisingly, it will be the US which adds the maximum in developed countries. So, so this whole demographic profile of this world, I think the world needs to prepare for that also. And by denying movement of natural persons, they are not really preparing for it.
Yeah, but politicians are very, very
So
short-sighted.
it's not just migration, it is also immigration.
True. Okay, thank you very much, sir.